Hey, heathens! This is a topic that came up in one of my other videos. I posted, this is my favorite contradiction in the Bible. And I got one of my other subscribers sent me a private message wanting to know, hey, how exactly does that work and how should we use it against other Christians? I didn't really want to do it like this, but I will, because I think it's important enough, and I think it's one of the best that you could possibly have against Christians. Doesn't help you much against Jewish people because it's all New Testament stuff. But I'm going to give you the short version first, and then we'll come back and fill in some of the gaps. Here's the basics. Matthew and Luke are the only two of the four Gospels that talk about the birth of Christ. Matthew never says anything about Nazareth or anything else. They just say that they live in Bethlehem. Apparently that's where they're from. Even goes so far to mention their house. So, they go to their house and they're in Bethlehem. Later go to Egypt to escape King Herod. Luke, however, says that they lived in Nazareth and had to go to Bethlehem as part of a census that was being done. Depends on the version of the Bible that you have. Some say tax, some say register. There's a couple different ways, but basically they're talking about a census, and they have to go to this town by order of Augustus Caesar through the governor of Syria, Quirinius, I believe is how it's pronounced. That's the closest I can come based on what I've seen. Now, here's the problem. If Luke is true, the census that he is talking about happened in the year 6 CE. We know this because if it came from Augustus Caesar, Caesar was not in control of this area of land of Judea until 6 CE. Oh, what, you don't know what CE is? You might call it BC if you're a Christian. I'm sorry, AD. Excuse me, AD. You got BC and AD, you got BCE and CE for everybody else. So, in the year 6 CE, Rome gets control over Judea, and the census goes out so that he can get, knowledge of the people in this area that he took over. Okay, seems logical. It's illogical that he would want Joseph to go to the land of his grandfather. Why not his father? But whatever. Maybe they're from the same place. Whatever. So, Joseph has to go to the land of his grandfather for this census in 6 CE. Matthew says that King Herod, after the birth of Christ and news of this birth comes to him, that he orders the slaughter of the innocents, killing of all the firstborn males, in order to try and wipe out this Savior who would become the leader of Israel. You see, that's the problem. It's very well known, documented, and accepted that King Herod died in the year 4 BCE. So, here's 0. Herod died before. The census happened after. They can't both be true. So there you have it. That is the best contradiction against Christianity that you can have, because it proves that at least one of them is lying. And if one of them is lying, then how do you know that the other is not lying? And if the other is possibly lying, then how do you know that all of them aren't lying? How do you know that the whole thing wasn't put together for just pure silly reasons to try and prove this prophecy true? Could that be? Could it possibly be that they just made stuff up? Well, let's look at it. One of the two of them is lying, right? Now we get into the second half of it all. One of the two of them is lying. Is it Matthew, who tries to relate Jesus Christ to Moses, killing of the firstborns, having to go to Egypt, which, by the way, there's no conversation about having to leave Bethlehem and go to Egypt first. And as a matter of fact, Luke says that they left Bethlehem and went straight back to Nazareth once everything was done with its census. Or is Luke lying? After trying to compare Jesus by having shepherds come to witness his birth, just like King David, the shepherd, who also, uses the town of Bethlehem. Of course, that's where David was from, which so does Matthew, so you can argue against that. Which, Luke tries several ways to compare Jesus to David as an Old Testament icon in order to suggest that he is the true Messiah. So which one is lying? I present to you both. They're both lying. Why are they both lying? Because here's the deal. Mark was the first gospel that was written according to most biblical scholars. Now, I'm not telling you something that it came from some atheist website. I'm not telling you something that came from anywhere else. Biblical scholars believe that Mark was written first and believe that it was written sometime after the year, and they figure on the year of 70 CE because it mentions the destruction of Jerusalem, which happened in the year of 70 CE. Here's the deal. Somewhere around the year of 66 CE, there was a little bit of an uprising from the Jewish people. They kind of got fed up with this whole Roman Empire that was pushing their way into the town. They had taken over, and they weren't real happy about the whole deal, and so they rebelled. Well, Roman Empire don't play that, and so they came in and they squashed them, killed them all. The few survivors all scattered everywhere, and they had no access to the city of Jerusalem. Keep this in mind. There is no one named Mark ever mentioned as a disciple of Jesus. So who the hell is Mark? Mark comes along and he writes his little book, and he has no access to the city of Jerusalem because they've all been scattered everywhere. Well, maybe he did. Maybe he gathered up some stuff and he took off with it, and he did it. Somewhere from the year of 70 to 85 CE, Matthew's book shows up. Now they believe Matthew wrote his book somewhere in Palestine or Syria because of archaeological finds. Luke believed to be written in the exact same period of time, but in Turkey, modern day Turkey. They're pretty sure John doesn't show up until much later, and possibly as late as 110 CE. So Matthew and Luke, with only Mark to go by, and they would have had access to the writings of Mark, which, by the way, is not mentioned anywhere else as a disciple of Christ, but there he is anyway. It's possible that Mark was a follower of Paul, and I got several other problems with Paul. We'll get to him another day. But Matthew and Luke, with only the writings of Mark to go by, figured we need to talk about how this guy was born. So let's talk about this virgin mother, which, by the way, is also a mistranslation of young woman, not virgin. Not to mention the fact that it was about somebody else and not talking about the Messiah. But that's all apart from everything. The main focus that we have here, as I see that I'm running out of time, is that Matthew and Luke both try two different ways to make up a story to tie Jesus to prophecies from before, and at least one of the two is wrong. And I suggest maybe both. maybe all four.